Hey guys, this is Smithy. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is so very special. We're going to talk about the newest Cosmic Beauty palette, and it is the Lovers palette. Now, I do not have that palette with me. It is just gotten released and I am on a low buy, no buy kind of a situation. Not no buy, low buy kind of a situation. And I definitely wanted to just dip into my own collection to see if I can get like similar vibes from those palettes or not. So if you guys want to see how I achieved this look and which all palettes gave me the same kind of vibes, then please keep on watching. If you're a color lover, but if you love muted tones, which is pretty much my color story that I really like, I feel like that you'll absolutely love that palette. Now I am on a low buy. I would be evaluating a lot of palettes in my collection just to see if I do match the vibes or not, because truth being told, I cannot buy every palette in my collection. So I have the palettes photo right in front of me along with the swatches on different skin tones. And when I was comparing, I felt like, I'll plop the picture on the screen for you guys. When I was comparing, I feel like there are bits and pieces that I do have like repeatedly in my collection. And those are the bits and pieces that is attracting me. Like everybody has their own style and their color story that they really like, right? I feel like that pinky, orangey, burgundy side, there's definitely captivating my attention. But when I see at like the greens, they're very muted, they're very toned down. Do I wear greens that much? No. Will I use this palette so much for the greens and the blues? No. But do I have those shades in different palettes? Yes. So let me show you a little bit of like inspiring color story that I think that is very close. So let's begin with that. The first thing that came into my mind is the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Sugar and Grunge palette. Now when I see this palette, I feel like, let's start with the mattes, okay? I feel like when you see the mattes here in this palette, you definitely see those oranges, that salmony tones, the pinky tones, obviously the deep burgundies. Now, if you dive into the other side of the palette, look at the greens. Now, the greens in this palette is also, they have like pastel green, which is totally there in the palette. They have like that muted olivey tone greens, which is also there in this palette. Now, when we talk about blues, the bright blue, I feel like we can totally get the vibes there. They have that deep blackish bluish shade that we can achieve. I feel like the mattes is pretty much covered here. I really feel like if you have this palette, you can get very similar vibes in the matte color story. Now let's move on to the shimmer side. Now when I see the shimmers, I feel like the greeny, the deeper green shimmer, I feel like we definitely can achieve one of these two shades into that green family. We also have that peachy shade that is here. Granted, this is not a multichrome inspired palette, but I feel like there's only one multichrome in the Lovers palette, which I feel if you do have the Bella Beauty Bar's Dead Roses palette, the shade which is Drop Dead is, it's like an exact shade to that multichrome in that palette. At least that's what I feel. I really feel, I've seen that in multiple lightings, live movement of the swatch. I feel like that shade is so close. So I definitely wanted to just mention that if that is the one that shade is the one that is like captivating your attention, because my eyes straight away went to that shade first. Now let's talk about Angelica's Singe Beauty's Galactic Visitor palette. Now, if you are aiming that palette for like the pastel tones, you have that pastel green here, you have that deep teal blue kind of shade here, you have the burgundies, the brown, the salmony tones, you also have like dusty blues here, you have a black here. I feel like the only shade, like a column of shades that are missing, is the pink tones, because this palette doesn't have those pink tones. But I feel like rest everything, I think pretty much can be achieved here too, because you have like those shimmer as well as that salmony matte, you know, all those things. Like you can get very similar vibes. If you take that yellow off, you have that part of the palette here too. So just wanted to just give you a few inspo. By no means am I calling these palettes like dupes, but again, you can get easily like very similar vibes. And I'm going to create a look with inspired by that palette, but using these palettes. So let's move on, there's another palette that also I felt like is very close to the vibes, is this Simply Posh Cosmetics Fairy Tales Fairies palette. Now this, I feel like you are not getting oranges. You have those pinks, you have those blues, you have those pastel greens. Even these greens are like leaning a little bit more like army-ish. The shimmer shades are very light and duochromy, so you would get that too. So just throwing it out there. So that's there. I also first thought about Glaminatrix Pretties in Pastels palette because it does have like pretty much like a lot of pastel shades here. So we have those pinks and oranges, those burgundy tones, but the green, you get that minty green, but you're not getting that army green or like that blue, the teal blue shade. So I felt like this it's the least closest to that palette. So we'll keep that away. I also wanted to talk about the Ensley Rain Cosmic Dreamer palette if you have that. I felt like you do get those pinks, those duochromy shifty shades. You also have that salmony peachy orangey shade. You have those army tone greens here. You have that tealy green blue kind of shade here. But this palette definitely lacks those pastel shades. But it also has that, you know, that blue to purple shifting shade. I don't know if the blue to purple shifting shade is there in their palette, is it shifting or not. But I feel like this was also a close contender, but I feel like with the mattes, I feel like this is pretty much covered. Okay, so this is like the closest thing that we have in the mattes category, so we're definitely going to use this today in today's look. So let's begin and see if we can get a similar vibe of that palette with my existing palettes in my collection. So let's begin. I also wanted to actually talk about the Longing palette. I feel like Longing palette definitely gives those blues and green vibes here, but obviously not the pinks and the oranges. But this palette is definitely like the muted, the dust, the, you know, the gray scale kind of a color story, which would be very similar to that one, the Lovers palette. But Lovers palette is definitely much more colorful. If you like this kind of color story, I feel like you love the Lovers palette also. Okay, so let's begin. I'm gonna start off with obviously Sugar and Grunge. Let's start off with the greens. So I feel like this shade, the deeper shade green, and this mid-tone is definitely the shades that are there present in the Lovers palette too. So we're going to start with that. I'm going to start with that Garage Band shade, which is the deepest shade in the palette. And I'm going to take that in the outer corner. I'm going to keep it on the extreme outer corners, and you know, Blend Bunny Cosmetics mattes are like extremely blendable and buildable. They're like the top tier matte formula that I have in my collection. This makeup, I've been wearing this for close to 8 hours now. So do not judge my makeup right now. Hence the liner, you know. When I step out of the house, I need a liner. That's why I do have liner and mascara already. But ignore that. So I'm just placing it right there. Okay. Taking the same brush, moving into 1995, which is that army green kind of shade. And I'm going to take that and start blending the edges of that deeper green. And just taking it halfway through the crease. Okay, just like that. Look how the blend is, it's so pretty. Also just meshing it in that deeper green shade just so that there's no harsh edges. And I'm going to take that same shade on the lower lash line too. Absolutely loving the blend. I love this palette. This is definitely my favorite Blend Bunny Cosmetics palette that I have in my collection. It's so pretty. I really wish that they come out with this palette again with any name because this color story is beautiful. Taking that same 1995 shade on the outer corners of the lower lash line, just melting it with the upper lid. Okay. Now, we definitely do see salmon shades, pinky shades. I'm going to just dip into the Singe Beauty palette for the salmony shades, I feel like that salmony shade is pretty close, which is called Hoodoos, this one. So let's take that. And I'm going to take that in the inner part of the crease and just melting it with that green. Look at that. So pretty, right? That is so pretty. Oh, I love that. We also have a lighter tone, skin tony, pinkish, orangey shade. So I'm going to take this shade also in and just blend the edges. Again, I would use that shade in the Lovers palette also just the same way to blend the mid-tone shade out. So that performs beautifully. I'm going to take that same salmony shade Hoodoos on the lower lash line too. Look how stunning that is. I love it. Oh, I so love it. Now I'm taking this green shade, the pastel-y green shade, which is Saucer. And I'm going to take that in the inner corner of the eyelid as my pop. Look how stunning that is. This can be such a beautiful, like a all matte look too. I'm absolutely loving the vibes. Oh, I love it. I already love it. Now we have that blue shimmer there. So I'm going to dip into this shade Believe. And I'm going to just take that in the outer portion of the eyelid, just melting it with that green. Just right there, keeping it right there. Look how stunning that palette is. That shade is. Even though this shade Beam doesn't look like a green. I mean, it does look like a green to you guys. It is such a beautiful, stunning shade, but I am going to dip into the Sugar in the Grunge palette green just because this green definitely looks like the Lovers green. This one. So let's take that butterfly shade and I'm going to take that right there and melting it with that blue. I'm going to do the same thing on the other eye. I'm melting everything together just so that there's no harsh lines. I'm so loving that. So pretty. Let me finish off this eye with some liner and mascara. And that's my final look. I really love the way how this turned out. I have no doubts that that palette would perform beautifully. From them, I have Cool palettes, Neutrals palettes, I have Tis the Season. I feel like all those palettes just perform so beautifully. And these palettes, if you love the vibe of the Sugar and the Grunge palette, I feel like you will absolutely love it. But that's all for today. I really hope that this video was helpful for you guys. If you are on a low buy or no buy, I might have given you recommendations that you can find in your own collection. But that's all for today. If you did like my video, you know what to do. Do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And ring that notification bell so that you're notified every time that I post next. I generally upload 3 videos every single week, every Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays at 9 AM Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.